You're listening to the Trade Show Insights Podcast, Season 21, Episode 7. I'm your host and exhibit marketing strategist, Marlis Arnold, bringing you tools to improve your exhibit results. On today's episode, brought to you by the Exhibit Marketers Cafe, we're talking about the psychology behind attendee behavior and some of the opportunities it presents. Have you ever wondered what truly drives human decisions? Our guest today has unlocked the hidden psychology behind why people do what they do or buy what they buy, and her insights will transform how you think about human behavior. When the world's most influential brands need to understand why people make decisions, they turn to Melina Palmer. Her chart-topping podcast, The Brainy Business, has more than 1.3 million downloads from over 170 countries, and her 3 best-selling books have earned multiple international awards. She teaches applied behavioral economics via Texas A&M University. She's been featured in the Washington Post, Forbes, Inc., Investopedia, and Business Insider, as well as graced the stages of TEDx Portland and South by Southwest. Known for taking complex science and turning it into practical strategies that drive meaningful change, Melina loves training corporate teams on why customers buy and employees buy in. Welcome to Trade Show Insights, Melina.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm delighted to be here.
And I have to say, I am in the process of reading, I'm an overachiever, so I'm actually reading What Your Customer Wants and Can't Tell You and The Truth About Pricing.
Yay.
So I'm partway into both of them. So I'm excited to dive into these topics today, especially, thinking about how this relates to the show floor, the trade show floor. Let's back up though first. For somebody who doesn't know, can you give us kind of a little snapshot of how does behavioral economics explain or influence customer experiences?
Yeah. Well, and I think even, step back from that for those that are like, wait, what even is behavioral economics? What
True.
are we talking about here? I like to just say, if traditional economics and psychology had a baby, you have behavioral economics. And essentially the reason that the field exists is because traditional economics assumes logical people making rational choices in everything they do all the time. And it's based on like what someone somewhere thinks people should do. But like, you don't know, right? Like, I guess in that way, like what's logical to, computer typing of a brain. And so, what we know over time is like humans don't really work in that way. Like if it was enough to just know that you should, walk for 30 minutes a day and eat less calories than you burn, like we would be all set, right? But we know that's not really how it works. And so what you ended up with is, economic models that don't really predict what people actually do. And so over time, you had people from psychology and economics and neuroscience and philosophy and all these fields, like working together, entering one another's fields, trying to see if there were ways to better predict what people actually do and why. Right. And so thankfully, there are a lot of those concepts, and that's where the field of behavioral economics comes from. And so with that in mind, something to note is that research shows humans make, on average, about 35,000 decisions each every single day.
Wow.
Like we are constantly in a state of choice, right? If you break that down, assuming people are sleeping 8 hours a night, you're welcome, like at least in this sort of dream state here. That means we're making a decision, like one decision every 2 seconds or so, like a little bit less than that.
Wow.
And that can be pretty overwhelming. Like, and if I asked you, like, how many decisions do you remember making yesterday?
Not nearly 35,000.
Yeah. I know, right? But there's usually someone's like, I don't know, 4, right? Like 2, I don't remember.
10.
Yeah. And like if we're pressed, I could come up with 100 or something, but you just really can't get to those specific decisions. So like, how do we actually like function if we're not making those choices on a conscious level? We don't remember them. It's because our brains run on habit, predictability, the status quo, like what has worked in the past. And so the vast majority of what anyone does in any day and our life experience is based on that predictability, the habit, that subconscious decision making. And so what behavioral economics really looks at are, what are the rules, the concepts that the brain tends to lean on to make its decisions in that subconscious state. And since most decisions are done in that way, if we understand how to apply the way that we say something, the way we present information to line up with those natural brain processes, then you're more likely to have people like customers buy in, employees buy in, right? The problem is conscious and subconscious brain don't speak to each other. They don't speak the same language. They don't work together at all. And so when you sit down and say, hey, if I was a human person attending an event, what might I like? If I was getting an email, what would I click on? You're thinking from that conscious state of what you think people will want, and not on the receiving end of the subconscious that's buying the thing. And what we like to think we do and how we like to think people act is just not typically correct.
I've also heard it said that, when you try to do like a customer survey, don't believe what they tell you, because what they tell you and what they actually do are not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, there's a reason the book is called What Your Customer Wants and Can't Tell You, right? Because people don't even know in that same way. And there are studies done where they have someone in an fMRI machine. It's just like an MRI, but so it's looking at brain activity. And if you ask someone, like, so if they watch a commercial or they buy something like through a process and you ask them why they did whatever it was, you can like watch the brain lie to itself about why it did something. Like it just does not know most of the time.
Okay. So going back then, now that we have that framework, then how can we use, or how can we study the behavioral economics to understand how that's influencing attendee behavior at a conference or a trade show?
Yeah. So being able to learn and understand the concepts is a helpful place to start, but there are hundreds of them. So, you don't have to start with all of those. On my show, the Brainy Business Podcast, I have episodes dedicated to all sorts of concepts. And so you can just, listen to some of those if you want to learn more, but we'll talk about some today as well.
And we'll have links to some of those in the show notes as well, so people can check those out. But let's just, the big story here is that trade shows are overwhelming. I mean, yes. You walk into a trade show and it's just, you got light, you got sound, you got people going everywhere, which way. I mean, it's just, especially for like an introvert, it's just so much. So what are some of the things that, let's start on the show organizer side first. What are some things that a show organizer can do to design an experience that is, what I want to say, in sync with attendees' brains and how they're functioning, and try to kind of, it's always hard because when you talk about behavioral economics, people can take it too far and take it into a manipulating way. And that's not what we're trying to do. But how can an organizer frame their event so that it works in conjunction with the way the attendee's brain works?
Yeah, absolutely. And just like a quick note on the ethics manipulation question that's there for anybody that's thinking on that. Whether you think about it or not, the way you present information is impacting the decisions people make, the way that they act, no matter what. So whether you consider the science of it or not, you are impacting. Like if you put things on a list in alphabetical order versus reverse alphabetical versus random, it will impact the choice that people make. It just does anyway. And so in my opinion, like better to be thoughtful about it than not, right? Is a way to go about that. And in behavioral science, we also always have a space of free choice. So we work in nudges, not shoves, is sort of the
Mm.
way that we look at that. And so people can always do something else. And having that free choice is something that's helpful. Like, we're presenting what we think is the best option, and you can do another thing if you so choose. So when we look at this idea of being the event organizer, so anytime I'm working with a client, for one, what I'll always ask people is like, what do you want people to do? Right. So this is the place we start, which seems like a very basic question. But as we start to
Right.
break it down and we say, like, so if you only get one thing, right, it's the end of the event and people are remembering the thing, like, what is the one thing that matters the most that you want from them? And you have a few different stakeholders that you need to consider in this case, right? So, of course, you have
Mhm.
vendors that want as many people as possible coming by their booths in that experience, right? And that they want to get as many clients as possible and whatnot. But you also don't want to overwhelm people and have it feel like you're being, used car salesman every moment of
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
No.
Um, you want to have like all these possible things and lots of stuff that's exciting. But maybe you, like you said, you also want to be able to give people a breather, to have some free space. And like, yeah, we have a lot of raffles and things that happen, but like, where's the, like, why are we looking to interact with people? Like, is it better to have sections of, like, maybe it's zones that are like, if you really are interested in conversation, or I know I've seen where people have different, like, button or something if they want to have a conversation versus if they're just looking, or there are ways to be able to maybe help determine who's looking for what in those cases.
Like
But if you,
facilitating that.
yeah, and helping, right? And so I think too, like, is there a Zen space anywhere? Is there any room in your agenda? That's like another thing that I've
Yes.
been to a lot of events, and most often everything is crammed right up against everything else. There's
Exactly.
no
Yeah.
free space. There's no opportunity for anything. Everybody has to try to go to the bathroom at the same time and is like getting lunch at the same time. And it's just all the herding of people all the time in a way that just adds to feeling overwhelmed, right?
Well, and that is a big discussion right now in events, is that overstuffed agenda, because we all know that sometimes the best moments that happen at an event are the unexpected, the serendipitous moments. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if everything is so overscheduled, there's no opportunity for any of those kind of moments. So
Right.
I think, would you say that an organizer needs to kind of put on their attendee hat and think,
Yeah.
like, how would they walk the show or attend the event as an attendee, and think about what are some of those moments maybe that they can leave gaps for, or like you said, having particular uh, activities that
Yeah.
facilitate those kinds of connections.
Absolutely. And like good reflection spaces and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like, you can make the space fun in a way that a lot of events do a really good job about, right? But like, it doesn't have to feel exactly like every event. I spoke at an event about a year ago, maybe 18 months now, that was really, really thoughtfully done. And they had this huge, like, recreated tree in the middle of the event space.
Hmm.
And there were, the theme of the conference was believe. And they had all these like paper leaves. You could pick
Okay.
one and that said, like, I believe, and everybody would take a time, like a moment, to write their belief on a leaf, and they got added onto this tree, so it was like growing over time.
Cool.
But it's like an opportunity to write. They also had a station where they had people were teaching you to make origami flowers, and how to fold them, and they were turning them into this big wall, so you could either just pick up ones that were already made, if like I'm not going to make one, or if you wanted to take a minute to learn how and help to make other flowers, to make this like living wall that was sort of being created throughout the event.
How
And so if you
neat.
ever need a moment, you can go be a part of something like that. But you can also just be part of sessions as they're taking place as well.
Yeah, I think that is really key of like you said, giving people well, in fact that's another point that I wanted to talk about is some elements of surprise and delight. And I think that's so important with events as well is, not being, especially if it's a conference that happens every year. People
Mm,
are used to going, maybe they've attended for 10 out of the last 15 years or something, but to be able to offer them something different, something unexpected. We talk about Easter eggs,
mm,
and of course one of the best examples of that is Taylor Swift, and
yeah.
all the different elements of surprise and delight that she brings. But what are some ideas of ways, how can you construct moments of surprise and delight? I mean, I think it kind of goes back again, like you said, to starting with the end result
Mm,
and then
yeah.
working backwards. But how do you get to those?
Yeah. So I know we were talking about kind of that overarching event experience and things as well. So one of the kind of fundamental concepts in behavioral science here is the peak end rule. So if we're at the end and we're looking back and saying, how was that event? Hey, you went. Should I go next year? How was it? Right. The way that we make those decisions really are balanced on two moments more than any other. Everything gets kind of averaged out for these, and that is whatever the peak was, positive or negative, and how it
Mm.
ended, the last
Mm.
moment, right? And so we'll talk a bit about the end in a second, but if you think about the peak, like that can be, like I said, good or bad. And so if it's like super overwhelming and you're feeling a lot of stress, or you can't find where you're supposed to go, or everything was like there wasn't room to sit or whatever else, like that is something you want to like remove those negatives before you think
Mhm.
about incorporating the delightful surprise stuff. Like that matters too, but make sure there's not really
Yeah,
bad
not
stuff
bad
that's,
surprises.
yeah, because those really can be a problem.
Yes.
But then if you look and find, a couple of things that are just delightful that you don't have, it's not like a guarantee that's always going to be there, but something that's unexpected and positive, that is something that can be those peak moments that can help to carry through when we look back and there's like the story about that thing that happened that was so cool. So that could be, something in an actual session, right? So if you have a big like keynote type of event, but then all of a sudden there's a like juggler that comes through, or I don't know, something that would be fun or interesting or like surprising, that is something that's like a wow factor that everybody experiences in one moment. You could also have something like the place to do origami or to play a game, or to be able to, like, there's something in a bag or something in the hotel room or something in that trade show that you weren't expecting to get. Like, we've all been to enough trade shows and events to know the basic. There's like someone's going to have a stress ball, someone's auctioning off AirPods, someone is going to have like the spin the wheel, someone's going to have like there's a stuffed animal somewhere, like all the same stuff that's there all the
Mhm.
time. And so like what might be more delightful of an experience when with those like giveaways or opportunities within that are just different from what you see every single place that you go. It doesn't have to be everyone all the time, but maybe if you had all those, vendors come together and think about something that would be out of the ordinary here and uniquely inspiring them to be delightful could be helpful. And it's not, again, that every moment all the time has to be that, but look for
Right.
something that can have that peak spark.
Right. Well, and like you said, it doesn't have to be constant, and it doesn't have to be huge. It can be something that's small, but it's still a surprising twist on something.
Right. Or just like thoughtful and showing that you cared enough. Like I've seen
Right.
where it's the it could be that there's candy in the bags that you get, or there's like it's easy to get the water or like simple stuff that is hard to find at some of these type of events sometimes, but
Well,
really can help you sustain.
or one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine, and I've been seeing a lot of people sharing photos of what not to do on LinkedIn lately, is why nobody ever thinks to provide seating like in the aisles or in the hallways or stuff, and people are all sitting on the floor like
Yeah.
checking their messages or trying to eat their lunch or whatever. It's like, why not have some surprise and delight of some wonderful just lounge areas? I've been to some events where they had these really nice lounge areas in the lobby,
Yeah.
and so you had areas where you could go, and it wasn't just like, let's throw a bunch of benches out here. It was, there were some plants, and it had like this whole theme or this whole atmosphere to it. And it's like,
Right.
again, it's not something that is just totally out of the box. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
should be something that shouldn't be that much of a surprise and delight, but I
Right.
mean, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. It should be something that you want to do to delight your attendees.
Well, and even like on that note, I think it's like having charging stations that
Yes.
are available, and maybe it's, if the rooms are ones that have like it's not like you had to remember your charger, but we actually have the cords that are available at if there are tables and sessions or available around. And even to say, we've got this like green space if you want to go sit amongst some different like trees or plants or something. I mean, maybe a crazy idea, but like everybody, quote unquote everybody, most everybody loves puppies, right? You could have a little puppy petting area if you want for people to go like interact with something that's kind of just delightful and adorable, like have sessions to be able to go like chat with people while you're holding a puppy. Like that sounds nice. I wouldn't hate that.
Well, and the cool thing, not to go down another rabbit hole here, but just FYI to all the organizers listening, all of these things we've been mentioning are great sponsorship opportunities. So
For
it's
sure.
not like you have to just come up with the budget and do all these things, but think about what would be your surprise and delight elements, and then offer those out as sponsorships, and then bring it all together where you're satisfying an attendee need, but you're also turning it into a sponsorship opportunity at the same time. So I think that there are so many options to do things like that.
Yeah. And just having that space for the networking and making it easy for people that aren't comfortable starting a conversation. So like, is there something with the conversation starters, or if it is, whether it's on a with your registration or a bag, if it's like find someone who I've seen different options where it's like, if I have a blue diamond on my badge and you have an orange diamond and someone else has a blue square or whatever, and it's like find somebody who has the same shape or the same color as you and have a conversation with them, or like something to help like have a reason to go up and talk to somebody, even as silly as that.
And it gamifies it, doing something like that. It becomes a game. It's not so much like, oh my goodness, I have to talk to somebody, but it's like, oh, I have to find the person that matches my badge,
Right.
So it becomes more of like a fun adventure that way. So let's switch gears now. We talked about some of the things the organizers can do. Let's talk about how can exhibitors use some of these behavioral concepts to craft more compelling exhibits, to draw people in, and also to inspire people to take action.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of what we were already talking about, right? Like we've all seen the same basic booth experience that you have a lot. So if you can get out of what everyone else is doing, that can be interesting. Sometimes there's lots of good budget to do something like that. Sometimes there's not. But even that thing we're talking about, the tree and write your thought on it or something, like you could make that pretty inexpensively if you wanted to do something along those lines. What I think is really great is when the vendor, exhibitor, whatever we want to call that they're able to like lean into the like an emotion they help somebody with, or something that's on this deeper kind of brainy level, to be the idea of the little thing that's the experience, that's like one piece of all of what they do, right? So I always think one of the greatest examples from branding that I think is Jake from State Farm. And that original commercial, right, where it's like, yeah, 2 a.m., who is this? And he's wearing khakis, right? But State Farm does 1,000,005 things. And actually everyone has 24/7 claim service. But when it's on a list, it doesn't mean anything like that. But when it's I'm stressed, it's the middle of the night, I call, there's somebody there. They're saying a whole lot with that moment, right? And they happen to make it funny. And I know if I'm stressed, I can call State Farm, right? I make that mental connection. That's how our brains associate. And
they personified it.
Yeah, for sure. And so I worked at a financial institution, ran a marketing department there. The thing that we gave away that everybody wanted and was over the moon for was just $1 bills was our giveaway. And people thought it was the greatest thing ever. And we had little sticky notes on them saying you could use this. And if you open an account, you get $25 or something, or you can just take the dollar. Right. And people were is it really? It's real money. And it's yeah.
Funny.
And it's so much less than any other, tchotchkes and things you're buying for these sorts of events. But it made sense, as a financial institution. I did something similar for an accountant that was a client to have dollars that they gave out. And it's talking about then your conversation can be about saving you money and keeping those dollars. And we care about whatever. And so if you think about the stress that people feel or other aspects of a problem you solve for them or a feeling that they want to have, how can you personify that? How can you turn that into something interesting, like a fun play on words or something they're able to experience that then can be a later conversation about what it is that you do, and they'll remember you through that process. If it's just hey, guess what I have? Then I don't want to talk to you.
It takes this big high-minded concept and makes it more tangible, so people can actually relate to it. Or in the case of giving them a dollar bill, they can actually physically touch it.
Right. Yeah. And it's I know what cash money is, right? And maybe I'll buy a soda. I don't you also have this endowment effect of starting to think about what you're going to buy in that case, right? But there's so many, even if it is kind of the standard thing you give away, if there's a better story around it, and when you can lean into emotion and storytelling, that's where people are, that's ties to memory, right? And the experience. So the other aspect of that is, don't feel I know it feels this is the one day we're here at the event. This is the one moment they're going to walk by. This is my only opportunity to tell them everything I could possibly tell them about why they should work with us. Please resist that urge.
Yeah.
If you do a good enough job to have the experience or the conversation that someone feels it is helping them with something they're struggling with, and then you can schedule circle back calls before people leave. That's a big piece too. Have a reason for people to connect back to you. And of course, different industries, different types of vendors, you've got different stuff, your goals, right? But if it is get on the phone, have this follow-up, get you scheduled for this, whatever, there's usually something you're trying to get them to do, right? If you can pre-schedule those and also be helping them with, a reason to reconnect and be thinking about those follow-up moments and be proactive in those. I've seen so many events where people invest massive amounts of money to have their team have a booth somewhere, and they send an intern who knows nothing about anything that just stands there and can't answer questions and is not vocal with anyone. And even interested people, they don't follow up. They don't take down names. It's why were you here? Why were you here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, don't even get me started on the bad booth behavior. That could be a whole other side of the behavioral economics, is what your staff does in the booth. But talking about some of those kinds of things, it would just I wish we could talk all afternoon. I mean, I've got so many other questions to ask, but I want to zero in on the idea of follow-up, because that's where a lot of exhibitors really struggle. is they, maybe they do a great job in the booth. Their staff is really on it, and they're engaging people, and they're qualifying, and they're talking to people, and they're getting all these names to follow up with, and then like nothing happens.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
what are some things that exhibitors can think about behavioral wise to make their follow-up better? And I think one of the things you talked about just with the example you were giving, it made me think of like the idea of a movie trailer, of like in the booth
Mm,
is like the movie trailer, and you want to leave them wanting more,
right.
so
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
are some things that exhibitors can do like that?
Yeah. So, one, have a plan before you go to the event slash the event
Yes.
is over is like some, key things to be able to do. And also, try to follow up as quickly as you can, right? Have some sort of a process. If there's an email, ideally there's something automated that you're able to be sending out, but don't make it feel like a weird salesy,
Mm-hmm.
automated email is a piece of that. Like, what was something you talked about that you can remember, or make a note about something they were interested in? And you could be doing some version of segmenting of, we talked about either A, B, or C. These are the three types of conversations I'm going to have. I can catalog, you're an A versus a B to understand what you're going to like talk about when you follow up with somebody. I think also realizing before you go how many leads you actually need to convert for it to feel like it was a successful event.
Mm-hmm.
Because for a lot of groups, even if you got 5 people to sign up, or 10 or so, it would be like amazing. And if you have that trackable aspect, but it feels like, oh my gosh, I have to have 500 conversations and then I don't do anything. If you focus on finding the 10 people that are really solid and invest in those conversations and understanding them and following up, like those can be, a much better use of time. Still talk to the other 490 people, but like
Right.
really think about finding that is a piece that I think matters a lot. And the other thing I'll say about this, both for people putting on the event, the exhibitors, everything, I'm a big proponent of like knowing that you're not the hero of any of this story, right? And in this way, and it's also, so this customer, this person is the hero, and if you're going to
Mm-hmm.
help them to be that, understand what your role is in their journey. Are you a mentor to them, like someone that's going to help them? They're going to make mistakes, but you're like nudging and you're sort of there. Are you a sidekick? Like, are you going to be
Hmm.
helping them every step along the way, and you're bringing snacks and like they don't know what they need but they know who to call? That's you. Or are you like a sword, something that helps them to like vanquish that ultimate evil? Like, where does your brand fit like in that
Mm.
aspect? And if you understand that, you can think about the language, the type of follow-up, the imagery, and like holding that hero on a pedestal and helping them to feel that way. I do have, at the brainybusiness.com/hero, we have a cheat sheet. You can help figure out which one you are, and how that kind of plays into a business. As you use that as a filter for everything, it helps to see like, this hero wants me to check in, like they're needing some support, and know that there's almost no amount of time. It may feel like, oh man, a week's gone by and like they're all dead leads now or something because we haven't heard back, or they hate us, they've ghosted us. But it's almost never too late to kind of check in, and even to say, man, it's hard to believe it's been 6 months since XYZ event. I really enjoyed our conversation. How did that thing go? Like, that's almost more like, oh my gosh, this person remembers me after 6 months. Like, they really care, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love how you frame that in the three different ways that your brand can be perceived. I think, and we'll put a link for that hero worksheet in the show notes too. But I think that alone, figuring that out, that can frame how you present, what your booth looks like, what you
Mm-hmm.
do, what activities you do in the booth, what messaging you use, what
Yep.
kinds of follow-up language you use. I mean, by
Right.
figuring out where you fit in those three different roles,
Yeah.
that really does create a great framework for both the exhibitor and for the show organizer. So
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And then you can like channel your favorite, it's like is this something Robin would do, or is that more of a Yoda moment, knowing we're having very different franchises there, but like you can kind of figure out where you fall and have characters that really tie in with that. And before we close, and I know we're over on time, but when I talked about the peak end rule and saying that I would come back to the end as an important piece of this.
What a perfect place to end with the end rule.
Indeed. And so with that really is to know what the true end of the event is. And to know that even things outside of your control may be being used kind of against you or for you as people evaluate the event itself, right? So if someone has really bad travel experience getting home, it can like make it so the entire event, I look back and go, oh my gosh, let me tell you, I got stuck at the Charlotte airport and it was awful and this happened and whatever. It can like take over everything. So one, having good enough peaks to maybe hopefully overcome that is good. But if you have some sort of thoughtful follow-up that's going to happen, that's a delightful thing that can come in a week later or 3 days later or something that's even like a little bit over the top in that follow-up to try to have the best possible end to that event, like something people weren't expecting, something that's going to be delightful. You can end on a peak kind of and gloss over hopefully some of that other negative association that might have been like placed on you unfairly.
Interesting.
And
yeah.
So if you're thoughtful to that, because we've all had those events, right? Where you like lump it all in with that bad travel. So being able to know that that's something that humans do and like, where can we put in our delight here? And there's something that you send them electronically or like saying, hey, I know it's hard getting back in the office. Here's have a coffee on us, or what was like something. You can send anything, right? It doesn't have to cost more money, but there are options to show that you're still thinking about people later. Be a little bit delightful there and create your own end moment that's beyond the actual event.
I love that because like you said, you can't control what happens after they leave the show floor, but when you're delivering on something later, you can still have kind of that final word and make sure that it's a positive note. So that's a great idea. I love that. Awesome. Melina, thank you so much for joining us on Trade Show Insights. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah. Well, thebrainybusiness.com has the podcast, has links for all of my books. Of course, if you go to thebrainybusiness.com/hero, like we talked about, has that worksheet. So that's an option. You can also find me on all the socials as The Brainy Biz, B-I-Z, and also follow or connect with me, Melina Palmer, on LinkedIn, and always happy to meet people and hear about you. If you have a great experience, something that was delightful you want to share, whatever, come find me. I always love to hear about that.
Great. Well, thank you again so much for being here, and we will look for what you've got coming up next on LinkedIn and beyond. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like more, you can subscribe to the Trade Show Insights podcast and automatically receive future episodes on your chosen device. Simply search for Trade Show Insights in Apple, Spotify, or virtually anywhere else that podcasts are found, then click the subscribe button. Trade Show Insights is protected by the Creative Commons copyright license. You may feel free to share this recording with colleagues or embed it on your own blog as long as it's shared in its entirety and is not used for commercial purposes. To learn more, please see the link in the sidebar of the show notes at tradeshowinsights.com. Well, that's it for this episode of Trade Show Insights. Be sure to check out our show notes and archives at tradeshowinsights.com. You can also connect with me using the social media links or the contact page on the site. I'm Marlis Arnold. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time for more tools to improve your exhibit results.